Our sponsor for this show is New York Business Consultants, LLC. New York Business Consultants is hosting the grand opening of the World Entrepreneurship Summit, WES, on Africa. This amazing event will take place on Tuesday, October 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Mercy College, located at Herald Square next to Macy's at 66 West 35th Street. They have gathered together African ambassadors and entrepreneurs to discuss the tremendous opportunities and challenges for doing business in and with Africa. To find out more about this amazing event, go to their website at wes.newyorkbusinessconsultants.com.
Hello everyone! Thanks for tuning in to Savvy Central today. We are excited to bring you this special live broadcast where all your podcasting questions can get answered. So we, for the past several months, have been receiving countless calls from folks asking how to set up their own podcast show, from how do I get going to how do I start monetizing or know when I should even start considering bringing sponsors on board. So we're going to answer all of your questions today. We've already had some written in via email, and we'll get to those. We're also going to share with you how Savvy came to be and 10 essential factors that we got using podcasts that really help explode our business and influence in the world. So to get started, I just also want to let everyone know that whatever questions we can get to and you feel were not answered, don't worry. If you're in the tri-state New York area, we're having a live event in New York City that takes place on November 7th, so you can join us. You can get your tickets, which are on sale, by the way, for $27 up through Monday. After Monday, the tickets will go up to $47 shop, all dealing with all your questions regarding podcasting. So whatever we can't answer here today, please rest assured you can check that out. And if you can't make our New York live event because you're not in New York, don't worry. We're going to record it, and you can get a edition afterward. You can buy a podcast of it and listen to it at your own leisure. But to find out about the New York one, you can always go to masteringtheinfluencegame.eventbrite.com to get your tickets and find out further details. So let's get started, and I'll tell you a little bit about Savvy and how we came to be. Savvy's been in existence now for a little over a year and a half as a marketing tool for our consulting business. That is primarily why we originally started Savvy. Our original idea for Savvy was to have it be a call-in show that would focus around finance, kind of like a Susie Orman show. And that's what I thought we'd focus on. We'd have people calling with their financial woes. I would help them through their financial difficulties, and it would be huge and hopefully bring us leads and sales and all that jazz. Prior to starting the show, I had a couple test shows where I invited friends to call in with their questions and to also work through any of the kinks that I might come across working with the Blog Talk Radio platform. Now, mind you, Blog Talk Radio is a really, really super easy, friendly user platform. Anyone can learn to use it, but it's always a good idea just to test out everything to make sure you're comfortable with it before you go live. Well, one of my friends gave me the suggestion and said, you know what? You're no Susie Orman. Everyone knows Susie Orman. No one knows you. Who's going to call in and give you all their financial woes on your show? No one knows you. And if there's one thing people are very uncomfortable with, that is talking about their finances. They'll most likely call in quicker to talk about their sex life with their husband than they will be to talk about their financial woes. So my friend suggested, you just started a meetup 3 months earlier. It's been huge. And your whole general purpose of this meetup is to kind of build a business community where you all come together and share each other's lessons, wisdom, expertise with each other and help each other grow. She said, why don't you do that with Savvy? Why don't you make it an open platform and a vehicle for all entrepreneurs and small business owners to come on, share their expertise, their wisdom, all the lessons they've learned in business, so that all of you can listen in and learn from it and grow. And I said, wow, that makes sense. And not only does it make sense, it kind of really flowed with my general character and who I am as a person. I just really love to be in community. So this whole idea and platform, the way my friend put it forth, made complete sense for me and for Savvy. That is indeed the direction we took. We started Savvy with the idea of it's going to be a tight-knit business community that will share together, learn together, and grow together. So that's how we started Savvy. And within a couple short months, I was receiving amazing feedback from people that they felt I was so calming to talk with. They said, it's like you've been doing this for years. And I kind of allowed them the platform to open up, be real, and to just really express themselves and their business. And through a number of months of doing that, I started to get feedback from business owners that they were getting leads and sales and callbacks from people that didn't even know them after being on our show, that people would listen in and start to feel that emotional connection with the caller, with the guest that we had on. And from that point on, we started to also get some feedback from businesses saying they wanted to do sponsored ads with us and blah, blah, blah. So before you knew it, we decided about 10 months into the show to monetize it and take paid sponsors and paid promotional interviews. If a company had a product, service, or information they want to launch or promote on the show, we would have them on and they would pay for the interview, but it would be done in a non-salesy way. They would really get to talk about their product, their service, what benefits they offer the world in a really open, non-threatening way. If people coming on are getting leads and sales and more hits and on their subscription-based website and it's really benefiting people, then we have something here of value to offer. So 10 months out, we fully monetized Savvy, and we've been going strong ever since, now up to 77,000 global listeners. Yay! And that couldn't have been done without all the help of everyone out there listening and supporting us. So I thank you so much, everyone. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about 10 of the essential elements I've come across that have really helped us explode as a business using podcast. The first major benefit that we came across is public speaking, getting over the fear of public speaking and speaking in public as well as online and telesummits and classes, you name it. Prior to starting Savvy Central Radio, I was really uncomfortable talking in public. Going to network events was horrible for me. I hated it. And I would go to those networking events, try to hide in the back by the food table and talk to as little as few people as possible. And when I did see someone, I'd throw my card in their face and say, please call me and please work with me. Not very helpful. And I found, sadly, that many other business owners were doing the same. We were all desperate in the room trying to get each other to buy each other's products, services, or information, and not really building any true, deep connection with each other. And essentially, that's why I started the Meetup group, which from the platform of my Meetup group became what I used to start Savvy Central Radio. And what I noticed was that through starting of the Meetup and starting of Savvy Central Radio, it really helped me get comfortable putting out my message out there to people of who I really am and what my business is all about. So I have to say, podcasting is an awesome way to get over your fear of public speaking and to just get out there. Another thing that Savvy Central Radio helped me with was building credibility. As I said early on, initially Savvy Central Radio was built as a marketing tool for my consulting business. Guests would come on and they'll talk about their business, and every so often they'll mention financial issues or woes, and I can give my 2 cents and help them out. And hence, people listening in will get to know me as an expert. Well, as time went on, people did get to know me as an expert, and a lot of what I had to share with them in the very building of my own business, the lessons learned that I went through, the mistakes I made, the lessons I learned, as I shared and conversed with my guests on some of the mistakes I made and some of the mistakes they made, I was able to build my own credibility as a business owner. Not only in just being a finance consultant, but also in just being a business owner. So it was incredibly constructive in helping me build my credibility. Another amazing factor that podcasting helped with was creating an emotional connection. As I mentioned prior, a number of my guests came on and said after sharing their story on Savvy, because we had a really good way of bringing it out in our guests, getting our guests to feel comfortable in sharing their lessons and their business and their message, their general message, this emotional connection came about with me and the audience and with my guest and the audience. People who would interview on the show, as I said, would get feedback, our past guests, saying, hey, people called me after the show saying they loved what I had to say and they wanted to talk more about working with me. So I found that podcasting is an awesome way to build that emotional bridge to your prospective clients and get them to feel comfortable with you, hence possibly trust you later on and build a relationship, a business relationship with you. Another amazing factor that has come about with podcasting is the audience over listening to you over and over again as you either build your own podcast or you appear on other podcasts, that the audience gets to know you, feel comfortable with you, and you build that trust and that emotional connection again, but that falls right into building trust and likability after people get to know who you authentically are. Next, as you continue to do that, you will build a network and build your influence in your sphere. Like in my sphere, I've been really attracted to, and the businesses that have been attracted to me have been service-based industry. Mostly women, I'd say around 70% women. As service-based industry, meaning coaches, consultants, marketing consultants, that type of thing, have been all the businesses that have been really kind of drawn to me and me to them. And what has happened through Savvy Central Radio is we've built a tight-knit community. And now, after being on air for a year and a half, I know thousands upon thousands of businesses, some of which have been an instrumental means in building Savvy and have become sponsors and guests and such. So it really helps, I find, podcasting to build your network and your influence. Another awesome opportunity has been an increase of opportunities have come about due to Savvy. What I found since Savvy Central Radio was conceived is that I've been asked to do a lot more live events, a lot more teleseminars, a lot more podcasts, to appear on other people's podcasts, as well as just opportunities I would have never expected. AKA some of the celebrities who have been on my show who I didn't even think would even come on my show have called me up later on and asked to, meet me for a cup of coffee. Awesome. I mean, awesome people. But also, more than that, it's had me realize that no matter who I have on my show, whether it's a brand new business, whether it's a well-established business or a top expert in the field of that business, is every single person in every single business has something amazing to offer. And I'm really happy to know that not only have I gotten to know some of the top line industry people personally and gotten to be friends with them, I've gotten to know some amazing business owners that might not be who everyone knows in the market yet, who might not be top of the line yet, but everyone has something amazing to offer and has taught me so much and has really increased my opportunities to just get to know people and to get to learn so much from all of these amazing business owners. Another amazing thing that's come about with podcasting is inspiration. Not only have I been told by countless listeners and guests how inspired they are listening to our show, I indeed have been inspired by all of the amazing guests sharing their stories, their lessons learned, their wisdom. I mean, like I said, no matter who you are, no matter what business you are in, no matter how long you've been in business, everyone has a story that matters and everyone can inspire everyone else. It doesn't matter where you've been in life, everyone can inspire the person next to you. So I find that podcasting has really helped inspire me, and also others have told me that I, indeed, by starting Savvy Central Radio with all our wonderful guests, have inspired them. So I'm completely grateful for that. Another cool thing, as I mentioned later on, as I've gotten over my fear of public speaking and I've gotten increased opportunities to speak, I have now become a sought-after speaker, which is another thing that can come about through using podcasting. If you use podcasting correctly and you practice on your topics and what you're going to talk about, if you go on a podcast and you sure it's in line with your general message in your business, podcasting can really help you get your word out and become a sought-after speaker in your line of work or in your field. Another thing, as I mentioned just a little while ago, is learning. You can learn so much from doing podcasts and from listening to podcasts and from being on other people's show. I've learned so much from all of the guests that have been on. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you've been a brand spanking new business or if you've been in business for a million years, you can learn from everyone. And another cool thing, as I mentioned a little earlier, is the building of community. And that is indeed what has happened to Savvy Central Radio. We have become a tight-knit business community where we all want to see each other succeed. And those are the 10 fundamental elements that have come around that I've noticed have helped my business flourish and grow and build our sphere of influence. So I really hope that everyone out there consider using podcasting as a means to get their message out, because it is an awesome, awesome, awesome technology. And now I'm going to get started with telling you some of the things I've learned on how you even get started, because we've received a number of questions from people on, okay, I want to get started. What do I even do to get started? And what I'll talk to you about first is, okay, now you want to get started. Where do I start? The first thing I would say is, why do you even want to start a show? What is the purpose of your show? And here are some general things to ask when you get started. What's the purpose of your show? What are you hoping to accomplish? What is your overall goal? Is your show, like say you're a life coach, is your show's general means to get more leads? Is your general show's means just to get people to know who you are? Yes, it can do all of that, but what is the main purpose of you starting a show? I think that's very important to get in congruent with, because I've talked to a lot of people who called me and said, hey, I want to start my own show. Can you help me? And I said, well, why do you want to start your own show? Well, I see that it's really worked for you, Savvy, so I just want to copy you. And I'm like, whoa, there's problem number one. You don't want to copy me. You want to do something that's authentically you. What message or what value do you have to bring to people that can best serve them and best serve your business? So tell me, what exactly do you want to do with the show? Like, what is it going to bring for you, and what are you going to bring to the audience? One life coach told me, well, listen, I do awesome meditations, and not enough people know about my meditations. So I would like to do a 15-minute show once a week where I put out my meditations, and anyone and everyone who wants to listen in and do them with me can do them with me. And if they feel so compelled, maybe call me afterward and work with me if they feel pulled in that direction. So I actually helped her, and we got our show up and going, and that's what she's going to end up doing. But so that's what I say. Before you even get started, don't follow other hosts and other shows and think, okay, they're doing it this way, they're successful, I'm going to copy them. Do what is congruent for you, what matches your value system. Find out the purpose of your show and what best fits you. As I said earlier, when I was going to start Savvy, I was going to originally imitate Susie Orman. I said, hey, she has a finance show. People love calling into her show and asking her advice. And I figured if I did that, people would begin to see me as an expert in finance and hire me. Well, the problem is, well, here's a major problem. I never really loved finance to begin with. I started that financial consulting business based on the fact that I did it in corporate for 20 years. I was good at it. So I figured I'll start a business doing what I'm good at. Did I love it? No. So when you listen to Susie Orman, she has massive passion behind her. She is authentically super in love with all things finance and helping people get really clear on their finance and helping them build a prosperous financial future. Me, that wasn't my overall purpose. That's not what I loved in life. What I loved in life was connecting with people and building community and pretty much talking with people and communicating with them. That was the things I enjoyed most. So for my purpose starting Savvy, when my friend came on and did the test interview with me and said, no, you need to switch this up and you need to do what you're good at, what's authentically you, and that's building community. And so she was indeed right. I followed her advice and built Savvy, authentically built on my value system, and that's what made Savvy successful. So again, get clear on your purpose for starting your show. Next, once you decide, okay, this is what my show is going to be about, who are you going to attract as an audience? Who's going to be your target audience? Now, for me, when I started Savvy, I really didn't answer this question. I had no idea who my target audience was going to be. I did know on a whole that I seemed to be very much attracted to, and vice versa, the market that was most attracted to me was service-based industry, like consultants and coaches and marketing coaches and sales reps and that type of thing. All the service-based industry type businesses were the ones that I was most attracted to and that were most attracted to me. So those were the people I got on as my guest, and later who then became also advertisers for my show. But I think now looking back, I would now, before I even get started, focus on who is my target market, who is my target audience that is going to be listening in. Another thing to get clear on is I knew the purpose of our show, Savvy, once I had my test interview with my friend, was going to be centered around building business community. Then I decided what content or guests did I want to have on. And what we did is we went out to our business forums, social media, people that knew us in different business networking events, and we called them up and said, hey, would you like to be on Savvy? We started this business show based on business community and sharing and growing together. And that's how we got our content and guests together. The last question to ask before you even begin to get started is, how will your show bring value to the audience? And for us, what we decided is we were going to create a show where, as I said, all of our guests, and me included, would share all of our lessons learned, all of our talents, all of our gifts, all of the things we've learned in business, and share it with the audience, and hence bring value to them as they learn from our mistakes and from our wisdom. And hopefully, in some cases, if we made a mistake and they heard our lesson, they would not repeat the mistake and learn from it. So that is the value we focused on giving our audience when we got started. So now that we got started with that, and we knew what we were going to give our audience, what the purpose of our show was going to be, now knowing the target of our audience, who we were going to hit, now we get started looking for guests. And as I said, some of the places to look for them would be business forums, social media, family, friends, internet, public. And by public, I say stay open. You never know where your next big guest can be. Now I'm super hyper aware. I go anywhere and everywhere, and no matter where I go, I see amazing folks, and I pull them aside and said, hey, we have Savvy Central Radio, now 77,000 global listeners. Would you like to be on our show? So I now have my ears perked up to look for the next great person to have on. So I would say just keep your ears open. You never know who knows who. One of our top guests that came in on Aviation Month was due to a good friend of mine. She had brought us our first celebrity guest, and it's because she was a close friend of the celebrity and said to me, hey, I know this person who'd be great for your show, and blah, 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 and I'll ask him. And lo and behold, I probably wouldn't have gotten this person on of my own accord, because honestly, at that time, Savvy was banking brand new and doing podcasts, and we didn't have that many listeners at that point. So we probably wouldn't have gotten this celebrity on, because really there was nothing for him to gain from coming on. But it was due to my wonderful friend introducing us and getting us that first big guest. And that first big guest, by the way, has really, really, really pumped our numbers and started to put us on the charts. Always keep your ears open, and you never know where your next big guest can come from and where any guest can come from. The number one thing I would say, and I say this to a lot of people who call into me, and I've heard this from people, how many times should I run my show, and what are the best time periods to have my show on? This can range. I have a business show, so prime time on Blog Talk Radio, according to Blog Talk Radio staff, is somewhere between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. But I knew, being a business podcast, that we were going to focus on business owners. I said, you know what, I'm going to have my show at 1 p.m. because I know a lot of business owners in the middle of the day are going to take a break, have some lunch, and maybe want to hear some viable, interesting business wisdom. I chose my time 1 o'clock on purpose. Now, the one thing I will say, that regardless of when the best time to have your show, to always be consistent, because to build an audience, to build the credibility and the trust and the likability with your audience, and to get audiences to want to keep tuning in, you must be consistent. It is the number one key factor. And for a lot of people who've called into me and said, when should I have my calls or my podcast, and how many times, the only thing I tell them over and over again is, regardless of when you pick, once a month, twice a week, be consistent. Pick a day, pick a date, and stick with it. If you say, I'm going to have one show a week on Friday at 12 noon, make sure that you have one show every week on Friday at 12 noon, and you stick to it no matter what. Even if you have to pre-record and upload the puppy, make sure you're consistent. If you want to build your podcast and have it be successful, consistency is key. And that's what I found for Savvy Central Radio. Since we've gotten started, we've made very certain to be consistent with our time, to be consistent as well with the quality. What we've tried to do continually as we've grown is to build our quality of podcast, not only with the guests we have on and the content, which have grown, but also with the way I put forth the message. In the beginning, I was very nervous. I had a lot of trouble speaking and being comfortable with that. Now I've gotten better at that. I practice at, what I'm going to talk about. I do my homework before I get on the line with the guest. And on top of that, I just make sure that I am focused. I've had enough sleep. I have water in front of me in case I have a coughing attack. But just to make sure that you're providing consistent quality as well as consistent time and that people can come to depend on you is very, very important. The next thing I would say before you even start your broadcast, your very first broadcast, do a test run, at least one. I did too. I would even have friends call in and listen to the show, if not ask questions, to get you comfortable with the whole platform of using Blog Talk Radio. Now, another question that has just come in that I'm going to answer is someone wrote in a question to me, what's the best platform? I hear iTunes is the way to go. Well, iTunes is awesome. I started out trying to use iTunes, but I had a lot of trouble with it. I have a PC and I have a Microsoft 7, and it kept crashing on me when I tried to exclusively use my podcast and have them uploaded straight into iTunes first. I was having my system continually crash using iTunes. So I've now taken iTunes off my system, but I do have my Blog Talk Radio shows streamed into iTunes, which you can do. I would suggest there's many platforms out there you can use to put your podcast through. There is Blueberry, there is FM Radio, there is Stitchers, there's a number of other podcasting platforms, but of all of them that I've seen, Blog Talk Radio really is user-friendly, as I said earlier on. And if you're not very tech savvy, I would say go with Blog Talk Radio to start, at least, if you don't feel like you want to go there forever. I think it's an awesome platform, and if you're not very tech savvy, it's very simple to use, and it's a great way to get started. If you decide later on that you want to move on to another platform, if you want to stream your Blog Talk Radio shows over to iTunes, you can do that from Blog Talk Radio. So I think it's an awesome platform, especially, as I said, if you're not very tech savvy. Blog Talk Radio is the platform I use, so for the question that came in, I prefer Blog Talk Radio, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with iTunes. I don't think one's better than another. I think they both have their benefits. I would also say that you can try out your other platforms. I stream my show through Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, and YouTube. A big portion of the world is tuning in today to YouTube. And it has become the means of which a lot of people, use entertainment and interact with audio and visual stuff on YouTube. So I would also suggest, if you use Blog Talk Radio, you can also use other platforms at the same time to stream your podcast. Now, here's another question that came in that I'm going to answer right now. And they said to me, where should I direct people for my show? Should I send them to Blog Talk Radio or should I send them to my website? Now, here's the thing. When I started my Blog Talk Radio show, I didn't think to consider sending them to my website. I sent them straight to Blog Talk Radio. Now that Savvy Central Radio has indeed become a full-on business for us, we've built our entire audience through Blog Talk Radio's platform. So since day one, everyone knows where to find me. They go to my Blog Talk Radio channel, and on that channel they have my website where they can click on and get more information. So for me, that has worked. But what I would say to you, if you're brand spanking new and you're using a podcast to build your message, say you're a life coach or a consultant and you want to use podcasting to get your message out there, I would direct people to your website. And the reason I would do that is you are a coach or a consultant, and generally when people are listening to your podcast and your show, you want them to get excited about your show and go like, I want to work with this person. I want to find out more about what I can get of value from him. And by directing them to your website and keeping your podcast up on your website as well, people can listen to your podcast and go, oh, wow, look, they have other products up here. I can go take a course for him, or I can buy his last teleseminar. So when you direct them to your website, it'll encourage them to buy more of your goods and services when they're already there and they can see them right in front of them. If you direct them to iTunes or Blog Talk, after they're finished listening to your podcast, they might just click it off and go home. But here, if you direct them to your website and have them listen to your podcast on your particular website, now they can get excited and click on your other product, services, or information you have to offer and buy it right there and then. So that's what I would suggest to the person that sent in that question. So let's move on with the other things you should do before starting your first show. Before starting your first show, do that test interview I mentioned. When you get your guests lined up, I would say have your guests send a list of questions prior to the broadcast. Now, I send it and I call them prospective questions. So the guest has the understanding that we could change these questions. They are in every right to change, add, or delete anything that I send them. And I tell them, if you want to make any revisions, send it to me 1 week prior to our interview. I also let the guest know on the phone as well as in an email how it's going to work out. That I will have them on, I will introduce the show and then introduce them as a guest, and then we'll start with our list of questions. I let every guest know that I will not surprise them with any trick questions. I let them know as well that if they decide they want to take the interview in a whole new direction, then I'm open with that. We're not married to these questions on the piece of paper. If during the interview you get inspired and you want to share a story, you want to go in a different direction, I'll take your lead. And that's what I do. And I tell you, I've listened to a couple people that called me for advice on starting their podcast, and I've seen them make this mistake. And here's one thing I want to tell you. Do not trick your guests. I know some people think, hey, you can get some good information on them if you just trick them in the hot seat. But I say one thing to lose credibility and piss off your guests is to trick them. Don't trick them. Pay very close attention to where they're going with the conversation, because what I found is by being open and listening to your, listening to your guest, you can get them to open up and talk about other things they might have not initially thought to talk about, but you have to be respectful. Don't trick them. I had one gal call me to help her with her podcast get up and going. And her very first podcast, I listened in, and she decided, hey, I got this really cool person on who's really top of the line in their industry. And she decided to ask them a really personal question, but out of the blue. And just said, oh, since you brought up this topic, I'm going to go here and talk about this. And there was dead silence on her call. And I heard top of the line industry person on her call said, hey, I'm not going there. That's not what we were going to talk about. And you could hear the awkwardness on the call, and you could hear how angry her guest was by being put on the spot like that live. It was a live call. So I will say to you that to do that sort of thing, you think, hey, I'm being a journalist, I'm pulling some cool information out here. Your point here for podcasting is to build your network, to build your credibility, to get people on your side, not to alienate and trick a guest. So I would just say be honest, be respectful, and use the line of questioning. If the guest decides to take it somewhere, go that way, but don't trick your guest. Number 3, do your homework. How many people have I heard, they get started, they ask me to help them with their podcast, and I see them go out there and they didn't do any homework on the person that came on, their guest. They don't know anything about their business. They got their website wrong. I mean, I've done that. I've made mistakes. There are some general days where you just have a really bad day and you mess up. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to have someone on talk about their book, read up on it. Even if you can't read the whole book, at least make an effort to have a general idea of what you're going to talk about so that you can sound intelligent and really carry on a very helpful interview, both for your guest and for your show. So do your homework is number 3. Number 4, I would say, if you are doing a live show, have a plan B. And I found this early on. I started my first 4 months doing live shows. And lo and behold, we had a bunch of issues come up. We had some guests that right in the middle of a call disappeared. Their line went dead. We had some others that during the initial, I call it pre-interview, what I do is I have a little chat with them prior to coming on the show just to get clear on what messages my guest wants to get out, what key points do you want to bring up, do you have any products or services you're launching, that type of thing. Also to get clear and comfortable with our energies together, if possible. And in most cases, it's possible, but in some cases, I've had to go live and not even talk to them. But what I would say that, in some cases, I've had someone on, we had a pre-interview, it's going well, the live interview comes up, and the little red button that says live recording, the person goes dead. All of a sudden, they're not talking, they get frozen, or they're answering the questions with yes or no answers, and you're over and your half-hour interview is done in 10 minutes. Well, that's happened to me, and the person was a really intelligent person, but now we have a whole 20 minutes left in the show, and I didn't have a plan B. So luckily, I was really, really good with pulling something out of thin air, and I started making up questions on the spot. But we were able to at least fill the next 20 minutes, and I even gave some anecdotes of my own and try to think, get things moving. But what I would say is to not run into that difficulty I had in the beginning. Make sure you have a plan B lined up. So if something happens, you know how to deal with it. Whether it's a lost call, a guest talking really fast and who's uncomfortable, have a way to deal with any of those issues ahead of time. That's another reason why a test interview is such a good idea. A number 5 tip I have is plan some extra questions just for that very reason, plan B. You'll come on and the person will get really frozen or scared or tongue-tied and answer the questions really quick. And here you have no questions lined up, no idea of where to go. Now here's a little tip I'll give you that what I found for extra questions is while the person you have on the line is talking to you, listen very, very carefully. What I found some of my best questions have come about from is listening to the guest as they tell their story and talk about their wisdom and their expertise and the experiences they have had. As they tell me these things, other stuff will pop up in my head like, oh, I wonder what happened after that, or I wonder how this turned out. And I'll write down a key word or a key sentence I want to talk to them about after they finish, and I save it. I write it down on paper, I keep a pen and paper, and when they're done talking, and only when they're done talking, do I start and say, hey, could you elaborate a little bit on XYZ? I'm really curious. How did that work out for you? And then that way you have a way in which to pull the interview further out, to open it up and fill more space if need be. And also just make it a little bit more interesting. Number 6 tip, I would say, choose a relevant title and keywords. And this will help with SEO and really get your shows to be tuned into. One criticism I was given a while back was, I love your show when I tune into it. I'm not sure what the heck they're about. Could you tell me the person's name, which is always important, but you put in a catchy title, but I don't know what you're going to be talking about. So I would say make sure the title is relevant to what you're going to talk about. Person I have on Monday, her name is Teresa de Gaubois, talking about the power of influence. So that is the title. So make sure your title is relevant and they use keywords that are relevant so that people can find your show and tune in because they know what the heck you're going to be talking about. Number 7 tip, I would say, is give yourself enough time to promote each show. I can't tell you how many people that have come to me saying, hey, help me out with my show. I'm not getting anywhere. So they lay out for me how they're handling stuff. Well, they don't really have a system in place. They're kind of just willy-nilling it, meaning they'll put the broadcast together on one day and then air it tomorrow, but they've not taken any time to promote it. And you really have to give yourself enough time to promote. I would say at least a couple days out at least. I have all my guests lined out at the start of the month, and I send it out in my newsletter. As well as each week passes, I put on my Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, you name it, I place on all of those social media sites the upcoming guest, a picture, something a little bit to get them excited about it. We're going to talk about the power of influence and how it can change your business. Tune in this Friday at blah, 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 that type of thing. So really give yourself enough time to promote, and there's a number of options for promoting. You don't just have to promote by your social media. There's a number of different ways to promote. I was tuned into the fact that you can use press releases to send out your word on a special broadcast or a special guest, and that tip was given to me by Blog Talk Radio. Now, another cool thing about Blog Talk Radio is twice a week they have a number of instructional interviews that they run when you're a member of Blog Talk Radio that you can tune into for free and learn tips about how to best work your podcast. And so I would check those out and see if you can join them because they're awesome tips. One of the tips they gave me is that a very viable source to get your word out is using press releases. And so we've used that for some of our top guests or big events. We've used press releases. It also helps with your SEO and getting the word out not only about your show but with your business. Another wonderful way, of course, is your newsletter. Mass emails to your list. Social media, as I mentioned. Enter a request to have your Blog Talk Radio show featured. Now, mind you, that's another wonderful tool on Blog Talk Radio. And what this does is if you want to get featured, you have a phenomenal guest, you go to your account page, you go down from account, you go down to feature, and then you place in the information. You click on the show you want to feature, and then you go down, put a little blurb about why this show should be featured, what's exciting about it. Now, mind you, don't do this for every single show. That's the mistake I made in the beginning. They get a lot of requests, and they pick the best of the best. They want a special guest. You got a celebrity coming on, you got the top-notch guru in marketing on, you got the leading expert in so-and-so on. They want to know about it because they have very limited spots. So make sure that you're not putting through every single show, because then they're going to stop looking at you, because they're going to be like, you just have Joe Schmo on every week. But put on your best content, your best guests. Make sure to have them featured. I myself have been very blessed that I think in June they featured 6 of our 9 shows. We had some phenomenal guests on, and Blog Talk Radio featured all of them. And here's the deal. When they feature your show, they put a icon on their front page saying staff pick or show of the day or whatever, and you get featured on the front page of Blog Talk Radio. And this generally leads to a lot more listens and a lot more downloads for your show, and really helps build credibility for your show. So it has helped me over the months really using that feature, but use it responsibly and don't overuse it. Another wonderful way to get your word out is to use your blog or website. If you write a weekly blog, like a written blog, talk about it. If you have a website, put up the Blog Talk Radio offers a widget code, so you can put up like the last 4 or 5 episodes on your show. You can do that. As well, I would say, you can also enter a whole nother page on your website where you upload each individual MP3 and do it that way. Tell a little bit about the guest and put up the MP3 alone. You could do that as well. You have a number of options to get it up on your website. Another amazing means is using traditional media outlets. It's not as easy to get in front of like a news channel, but if you're going to have a top-notch, phenomenal guest that is, say, a celebrity or something, the media will most likely be more interested in that type of guest, and you might be able to get a spot. What I will say, though, when you're trying to do that is if you have not built a relationship with the media folks that you're trying to reach out to, it's not very likely they're just going to put you on. You have to take the time to build those relationships first before you start asking for favors. So it might take a while before you will get them to pay attention to you, but really first start out by building that relationship. And here's the other thing. You can upload, as I said prior, all of your Blog Talk Radio shows onto or through, upload them through, stream them through iTunes, Blueberry, a number of other places. So you can keep your show running, your podcast, through several different platforms all at once if you choose. I would strongly suggest, though, that instead of sending your audience to 10 different sites at once, pick one site that you send them to listen to your show. And again, my general advice is if you're a coach or a consultant and you're using podcasts to build your brand or such, I would use one place to send them to, and that would be your website, I would say. But whatever you do, don't send them to, if you're going to have your show streamed through 10 different sites, don't send your audience through 10 different locations. Pick one location. Here's the general place where they can go to. But if other people want to stream through YouTube or Stitcher, that's fine, but keep it consistent, because if you send them to 10 different places, people are going to be confused. That would be my advice in that area. So, and here's another thing. During your interview, what are some things you can do during your interview to keep things going and to not freak out? Very early on, as I said, I was not the least bit comfortable with doing interviews or speaking in public. So I was not calm. I would get the runs before I did a show, and I would be super nervous and walking circles. I would say if you have to, go do some exercise, meditate before you get on if you're really nervous. But another thing, practice. That's what I did. I would practice my script, because I would script it, but I would script it and practice it so that when it came time for the show, I didn't sound like I was reading off a piece of paper. Because you don't know. There are some people who have come to me, asked them to help them with their podcast, and by the time they get on their show, they literally sound like they're reading off a piece of paper. That does not sound good. You're going to really quickly lose your audience if you are sounding like you're reading off a piece of paper. So practice your script, practice what you're going to say, get comfortable with it, do what you have to stay calm and relaxed. Next, as I said earlier, have a glass of water standing by. So in case you get that cough attack, you can take a sip of water. Most importantly, as I mentioned prior, listen to your guest. Don't interrupt them under, any circumstances as you're going through the interview, except, now this has happened on rare occurrences where I'll have a guest that I'll ask them one question and the whole interview, a whole half hour goes. Because I never have to ask them another question. They just keep going and going and going. It's like the Duracell battery, the Duracell bunny rabbit. They just keep going and going and going. Or is it the Energizer? It's the Energizer bunny. The Energizer bunny. But anyway, they just keep going and going and going. So you're coming to the end of your show. what I would do and what I have done is you wait for the person to finish a sentence. And sometimes it's hard because they're talking really fast. But when I hear them coming to the end of a sentence, I say, excuse me, hey, I just wanted to let you know, Deb, we're coming to the end of our time together. We have another 5 minutes of our show. Before we go, is there any last words of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with, or something like that? Something to let them know that we're segueing off of this episode and we're leaving shortly. But as far as the entire flow of the interview goes, do not interrupt your guests. Let them finish their thought and their full answer before you interrupt them, or you speak, I should say. So say I'm talking to someone, I have a really awesome talking, and they get me really intrigued, and I want to ask them a question. I don't interrupt them. I wait for them to finish. And as I said earlier, I write down the idea. I put down the keyword or the question on a piece of paper, and then when they're finished talking, I wait a couple seconds so I know they're finished, and then I ask them, hey, that was really interesting. Could you go a little bit deeper in this? This reminds me of that. What do you think of this? Or something like that. And then you can carry the conversation forward. But nothing sounds more unprofessional and rude is interrupting your guest. So make sure you really, really listen in. And as I said earlier, the listening in will also help you with what to ask next if you need more questions. Another thing, as we just said, have a pen and paper ready so that, hey, something comes to mind, you want to ask something, you can write it down on a piece of paper. You're not going, when they finish talking, you wanted to say something. Don't interrupt your guests, as I said, and let the interview flow. Do not sound like you're reading off a piece of paper, as I said. Practice it so that you'll sound fluid and comfortable. And mind you, don't beat yourself up. In the beginning, it's going to be a little tough. You're not used to it, so there might be times where you are flustered a bit. But just keep going. You'll get better as you continue to do it. I know I have. So I didn't start out being really calm and comfortable. I got comfortable over a period of time. Okay, there's someone in the queue who'd like to speak. I'm going to bring him on. It's ending in 7441. You're on the air.
Hey, yes? Christina, how are you? This is Brian.
Hey, Brian. This is our biggest sponsor of Winty. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do you have a podcasting question, Winty?
Yes, but I've been very busy today, and I thought I missed you. I really tried to grab you while you were still on the air. But good thing I hear you still talking. I guess I'm gonna have to go back to the rebroadcast and hear what I missed. But you really do have an interesting subject on today. I just wanted to let everybody know out there that I am one of Christina's biggest sponsors, and the reason for that is because last year she had an aviation month, and she hosted small business owners and entrepreneurs related to the aviation industry. And from there, I said, this could be a new venture or something that I could invest in. And since I realized the traditional way of advertising, which I've done before in the past via print, it's much, much more expensive than it is on podcast. And it also depends on the type of market you're trying to reach. Fortunately for me, I was at least able to double my return on investment on traditional media. But through Christina, when she started up her podcast, I just wanted to give a small testimonial.
Thank you.
I've been monitoring my web traffic, and I noticed that there has been a 40% increase in traffic and visits to the website. Now, these are organic, real click-throughs that have been coming to the website, and that has been happening consistently ever since I've been the main sponsor. But a lot of web traffic really doesn't mean anything unless you're not making a conversion. But I wish my conversions were as big as 40%, but I have been getting a consistent, solid 5% increase in sales. Now, some of you may say, well, 5%, that's not a big deal. Well, I have to say that 5% now in my pocket is better than not having it at all. But I'm just going to say is that it is really, really a good investment, especially if someone who doesn't have a lot to spend. But I say if you're considering getting your name out, as Christina was saying, I'd say give podcasting a call, and especially if you know the type of market that you're getting into. So I'll continue sponsoring Savvy. As long as I'm continuing to get the positive results, I'm doing okay with you, girl.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ryan and Winty. We're really, really grateful for all of your support since we started monetizing last year. And we're completely grateful because it was you, along with General Dynamics Company, that got us even thinking about monetizing Savvy. You were the two folks that came forward in Aviation Month to say we'd like to get on and do some advertising with you guys. So, but I'm grateful that you've stood in there from day one and been our biggest supporter. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to take another call.
Okay, I got to go anyway, but perfect timing. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Hello, 6082. You're on the line.
Hi, Christina. It's Vito Mazza. How are you?
Hi, Vito. Thanks so much for tuning in. Do you have a question?
Oh, well, I've been enjoying the program, and something was mentioned that something was not mentioned that I wanted to share with people. I've been a guest on your program once as a panel member and once as a sole guest, and the feedback that I received from the solo interview was very, very positive. Now, as far as monetizing, can I say that I got this sale or that sale or this client from that? No, I can't say that. But what it has exposed me to is a whole national group of people that are in my industry, and a gentleman called me, and now I'm involved in a consortium servicing the dental market, helping people get paid faster in the dental market and in the legal market. So it came because he heard your show randomly on the Internet, and I just wanted to say that there's a lot of peripheral benefit. You know, you might not see it that day, that month, that even year, but it does come to fruition when you give it a chance to. The other thing I'd like to say about you, Christina, is that you are authentic. And I think people hear that in your voice, but having met you many times in person and participated in some of your speaking programs, I can tell you that I value your friendship and your character. And so I just wanted to say that, and thank you very much for what you're doing, helping people get started on their journey today.
Oh, thank you, Vito. That is such an awesome testimonial. Thank you so much for sharing.
It's my pleasure.
Well, I'm going to put you back on hold and carry on with the rest of the telesummit.
Okay, very good. Good luck.
Take care. Bye, Vito.
Bye-bye.
Now, here's another question that came in. Someone said, okay, when do I know I'm ready to monetize my show? And see, that's different for everyone. For Savvy, we weren't really trying to monetize our show. We were, as I said initially, using it as a marketing tool. It kind of over time, very short time, turned into its own little entity and exploded. And then after about 7-8 months online, we got clients asking, can I do a sponsored ad with you? So what I had to end up doing then is I said, okay, let me go out there and find out what the heck something like that would cost. So I went out there, found out what other podcasters or radio programs are charging for advertising, based it on the numbers I now have, on a percentage of listeners I now had, and then came up with a number that I presented to our advertisers. And they were comfortable with it. And hence we've gotten amazing, wonderful advertisers, some of which, like Winty.com, that have been with us from the beginning of our monetizing and doing advertising. Also, as I said earlier, for us, after about 8 months of being online, we started to get a lot of feedback from past guests saying how much the show had helped them in their business, and how after their potential clients heard their interview with me, that they felt comfortable with calling them up and booking services or getting more familiar with their business or joining their subscription, stuff like that, getting more leads from people after they heard the interview. That once we realized that we were really providing a value to people, that they would come on and talk about their new product or launch, we decided we had something here of value to offer, and hence we started to also charge, as I said, for promotional interviews. You have a new product or service or something you want to get out that you're selling, you come on and you talk on Savvy. The one thing we don't do is we don't make it an infomercial. You come on Savvy, you talk about your product or service or your passion, but we present it in such a way that, hey, this is just something that I love tremendously. I'm giving amazing value and benefits to the world, and here's how. And if anyone's interested, here's where you can find out more about it. So it's done in a very casual, friendly, non-salesy way that we found has really worked for people. And that's generally how we got to monetizing the show. Now, how do I answer that question? How are you, and when do you know you're ready for advertisers? Well, I would say you have to have something to give the advertisers. No advertiser is just going to want to throw money at you for the sake of throwing money at you because you're nice. So there has to be a benefit for them in it. in the working with you and doing a paid advertisement. Now, I would say for you, maybe your listenership isn't explosive yet, but maybe you have several thousands of listeners, maybe 4, 5, 6,000 listeners, all in the same demographic that this small business is in, and it can serve them in that way, bring them some leads that they didn't have prior. So, you might not have the listener base yet, but you might have the demographics that will attract a potential advertiser. But you do have to think about how can I serve and what value can I bring potential advertisers. And once you've discovered what those are, that's what you're going to want to use as your selling point when you do go out looking for advertisers. We have another call coming on. Hold on one moment. I'm going to get that call. Hello, the call is coming in from 3575. Who's speaking?
Hi, Christina. It's Janet. How are you?
Hi, Janet. I'm so glad you can make it. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you. Oh, man, you are giving such great information.
I
hope
glad.
everybody who wants to do a podcast is listening to this. It's just really terrific.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone, this is Janet from Talk to the Animals podcast on Blog Talk Radio. She has a phenomenal show. And so please check out her show at Talk to the Animals, and the 2 is the letter 2. Do you have any questions, Janet, though, you'd like to add?
Yes, I was wondering, and you had started talking about this, about getting the sponsors, but I was wondering if you could go into a little more detail about that, Christina.
Sure, I could. I was just getting into that basically audience and listenership is based on service-based industry, and as well as most of our listeners, most of our guests are service-based industry. What I've looked for is, say I have a marketing guru come on last Friday. I call all the people on my list who are in the marketing industry, and I say, hey, we have amazing XYZ person coming on, and his influence is XYZ, and would you be interested in sponsoring this show? We think it'll help you get your word out about XYZ. Another thing I do, which I think is very important, is that I pay attention to my general people in my list and my general audience. What do they have going on in their life? For instance, I had someone who I know on my list who we're now friends on Facebook. I saw that she announced that she's having a product launch in about 3 months. Well, knowing that when you have a product launch, it takes time to get it up and going, to get people interested and excited about the new product. So I called her up and I said, hey, I see you have a new product coming up in 3 months, and we have XYZ guests coming on. Perhaps we'd like to put together a marketing package for you that might work in helping you get your message out. So what I do is I pay attention and I go around my social media and see, hey, is there some business that can really benefit out of what shows we have presently coming up? And then what I do, like say 2 months ago, I had 3 or 4 people call me saying, I'm interested in advertising, but not now. I have no new product launches or stuff coming up, but I will in the future, and I'll keep you updated. So for those particular people, one of them said to me, hey, I have a product launch coming up in 4 months. Another one said, hey, I have a book launch coming up in 2 months. I go to my calendar and I put them in there. I say XYZ has a product launch in January. And I put it on my calendar January 1st. I'm going to follow up with that person, give them a call, and find out where they're at and if they need our help. So that's something I do to help get advertisers continually in the door. And it's a constant thing. Some people think that once you get a couple advertisers, you can sit on your laurels and just rest. With any business, it's continually going out there and getting the business. If you don't continually go look for it, it's going to dry up the business you now have, and you're going to be sitting here with no business. But another thing I have to proudly say about Savvy Central Radio is that we have built a big network of referrals. And what I'm really proud of is a lot of our past guests have referred other people and businesses to our show to advertise and to be guests. So I'm really, really blessed about that, but that also shows the power and the trust and the likability we've built with our audience, and that's something that takes time. Another question that came into me is, how long do I have to wait till we will have like the listenership you have? And again, there is no set time frame. I know an amazing podcaster named John Lee Dumas, who is the Entrepreneur on Fire show. It's an awesome show. I love his show as well and listening to his podcast. Now, he got like 1 million listeners within, I think, 3 months. It was phenomenal. Right now, he's also making an awesome living with advertisers and such. But he also, and this is one thing that people don't understand, is John did his homework. Before he even did one show, he'd spent 6 months getting together 6 months worth of interviews fully completed before he even started his first show. He also got lined up advertisers before he even started a show. So this guy is amazing in that he had done all his homework. He had a super focused, laser focused plan of where he wanted to go with this show and what its mission was. When you have a super focused mission like that, then it makes sense that, okay, this is where I can grow it. Now, if you're coming out of the box and you're saying, hey, I just want to use this podcast to, make some extra money on the side and get my message out about my coaching business, that's not the same idea as what John had, because for John, he wanted to make podcasting his career, his vocation, right off the bat. And so for him, his value system and where he was going with his show was way different than, say, someone who's a coach who just wants to use it as a means to bring leads into their company. So you have to think about it. It's two different things. Now, I would say, as I said prior, if you are going to have advertisers, you really have to consider what value am I going to bring to the advertiser or to my audience. Another question came in saying, okay, I've gotten started, but my audio quality is kind of sucky. How do I fix that? I'm talking off of my computer microphone. Well, I find that doesn't really work so well. I would also, and I've told this to a number of people that have called in, do not do your calls on cell phones if at all possible. It's really crummy service that way. I do mine via Skype to Skype. Skype, I found, has offered really awesome quality because it's a digital call, and digital to digital seems to offer the best quality I've found so far. Phone is the number one best as far as not having drop calls. So landline all the way. If you're going to do a live call, I would suggest always using a landline. But also, as far as what equipment to use, get a good microphone. I started out using a cheap headset for $24 that really did a very tinny job. It didn't sound very good. And I went out there and invested for a good mic. I use Plantronics, and it offers very good high quality sound. There's also Shure, which offers the top line broadcasting mics that they use in Hollywood and stuff. They're several hundred to 1,000 and up, but they're very high quality. There is a Snow Globe mic, which is awesome, but I would suggest spending at least $50 on a mic to have a good quality mic and get good audio quality. Of course, now mind you, and I've heard this on Blog Talk Radio, you are never going to get radio sounding quality because you're not on the radio. You're on a podcast. Just get that straight, that you're not going to sound like, if you're broadcasting through Blog Talk Radio or something like that, that you're not going to sound like you're on the radio because you're operating through their system, and their system is a digital. You're calling into their system. It's digital. Either you're calling in via VoIP or you're calling in via phone, but you're still talking through a digital system, so it's not going to sound like a radio quality broadcast. But you can get pretty close if you use a good mic. That's that question. So we are getting to the end of our time here, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. But it's been exciting having you all on, and I'm sure I didn't get to everyone's questions here, but I just want to remind folks that regardless if we were able to get to your question, we are having a live event in Manhattan on November 7th. For everyone who couldn't get their questions answered here, they can go to and they can check out and get tickets and apply. Now, mind you, up till Monday, you can get your tickets for only $27 at masteringtheinfluencegame.eventbrite.com. And after Monday, tickets go up to $47, and anyone who's not in the tri-state area can either call us up for private. We now have a nuts to bolts program where you can get either basic help, intermediate help, or advanced help in getting your own podcast up or your podcast monetized, and you can talk to us about that at 718-713-2289. And as well, the live event we're doing in Manhattan, we will have a audio of that for a little bit cheaper cost that you can get after the event as well. So we have a number of different ways to get you the help you need. And again, if you have any questions, you can always contact us at SavvyCentralRadio@gmail.com. And I appreciate everyone for their questions that came in and for everyone calling in with their wonderful reviews. Thank you, Winty. Thank you, Janet of Talk to the Radio. And thank you, Vito Mazza. Have a wonderful day and talk to you this Monday.
Hi, it's Teresa DeGrobo here. I am so excited to be coming to New York with Christina Nichman and Mastering the Influence Game series hosted by SavvyCentralRadio. I am going to be speaking on how to become a master at the influence game. We're going to really dive into how do you get that stampede of customers that are really anxious to buy your products and your services, and what are the really critical steps you have to take to be really successful in connecting with the high-level influencers. How do you get past the gatekeepers and have them take you seriously and really want to play with you? We're also going to talk about the power of a best-selling book, why it's your top marketing tool, and I'm going to tell you the insider secret formula for how you can get there quickly. Looking forward to seeing you.
To find out more, go to masteringtheinfluencegame.eventbrite.com.